Okay, so again, like I said, welcome once again. And this is something that's been in my mind for quite some years now. Ever since I started my journey, there have been a couple of inflection points in my career journey as well. Like, a lot of you would have inflection points. My first inflection point was when I moved from engineering to design. Second one was when I moved from product design to more business design and strategy. But I think the one of my biggest career inflection point was when I moved from academia to when I moved from industry to academia. And once I started my academic journey, is when, PhD also happened, right? Or I would say PhD journey also started. And as I've gone deeper into the understanding of the academic system, right, how academic system works, right, with my institute, with my experience in the previous institute, and now with Flame, with my affiliation with IIT Delhi and also with IISc Bangalore, uh, the understanding of academics has grown, day by day, right? So that's one. Second, I also come across people or I come across forums where there is a certain perception that is built around what PhD is or what an academician is. Um, Not all of it is true, right? And I think it's somewhere it's important to break that. I would not say break that misconception, but I would say that spread the right awareness about what academics is like, what PhD is like, and what does a research scholar do, right? And how does a research scholar or how does research contribute to the building of of the nation also, right? In some way, right? So I think that is I would say a bit of a precursor to why I wanted to do this. And I'm very happy that, I got 20 plus registrations and, about 10 of you are already here, right? So welcome once again. I'll just share a few of my slides and keep, I would say noting questions if you have, and if you want to interrupt the flow, I think interrupt is not the word, but if you want to just, kind of ask me to a question in between, feel free to do that as well. Okay. So a quick snapshot of, my journey. This is not this is not an interview for me that, I should be talking into the details of this. But very quickly, I just want to tell you that, I have an engineering background followed by a product design degree from IISc Bangalore. I spent 13 years with the industry. A lot of it has been with the automotive industry. Initially more as a design role, but then more as a strategist role. So my area of practice is more, design, strategy, business value of design, and because I'm into academia, how do you kind of keep doing pedagogical innovations? How do you keep, building new skills in students? So all of those, things is something I like to do. Um, and my PhD journey, my academic journey started in 2018, where, when I was part of ISDI Parsons, which is now Atlas Tech University. I was heading their strategic design program and also, product design for a few years. Jitendra and I were colleagues there. Faiza has been my student, right? Ex-student, right? Who graduated from there. So it's nice to see a lot of these circles being complete here. And yeah, now I'm with Flame, and I'm into fourth year of my. I mean, I'm completing my fourth year as a PhD scholar, and yes, I'm still not a PhD, but I think there's a lot already to be shared and spoken of, and that's why this session. Okay, so the PhD journey can be, I would say segmented in various ways, right? And in fact, these are probably not yet comprehensive stages. After research work, there is dissertation, there is defense, and a lot of people say, बहुत लोग कहते हैं कि रिसर्चर की एक्चुअल जर्नी पीएचडी खत्म होने के बाद शुरू होती है। आपको जो पसंद होता है ना रिसर्च करने, जो एरिया में आपको इंटरेस्ट होता है, उसमें आप और ज्यादा करना चाहते हो, दैट एक्चुअली बिगिंस आफ्टर यू फिनिश योर पीएचडी, राइट? Because in PhD you are focused towards one larger goal, which is to complete the objectives behind, I mean, the objectives of the PhD first, get your degree, and then you actually start research, right? So those things I've not put here. Today's discussion is largely focused on the first two, okay? And because I wish to do a series of these, and um, again, it need not be in any order, right? So if you think today's session inspires you to apply, and at any point of time, 3 months, 6 months down the line, you want to come back, talk to me again about, how do you go about creating your, research proposal and methodologies, we can always talk about that. But today, I think the first and the foremost barrier, which is a barrier in mind, the mental blocks, right, about कि पीएचडी है क्या, मुझे करना चाहिए या नहीं करना चाहिए, राइट, मुझे कहाँ शुरू करना चाहिए, राइट, और फिर मुझे, अगर मैंने मन बना लिया है तो फिर मुझे कैसे शुरू करना चाहिए, राइट. सो दीज आर द लार्जर क्वेश्चंस which I believe today's session is going to focus on. So we'll not look into coursework and what happens once you start your research journey. That's not for today's session. But I just thought, you know, yes. So zooming in, right? Zooming in. Uh, so of course, what is a PhD? PhD करके क्या फायदा होगा, right? Am I the right person, right? Do I have the do I have the right kind of, let's say, skill sets, right kind of mindset, right kind of attitude to pursue a PhD, right? वो there is some kind of a perception we all have, right? कि अरे वो तो स्कॉलर है, वो तो कर ही लेगा, राइट. इन स्कूल्स वी ऑलवेज हैव दिस टेंडेंसी, और पेरेंट्स आल्सो विल इम्बाइब दिस सेइंग कि अरे तुम्हारे बस की बात नहीं है, राइट, शर्मा जी का बेटा मार्क्स अच्छे लाता है, वो कर लेगा, राइट. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, राइट. सो आई थिंक प्लीज डोंट ब्रिंग ऑल दोज biases in mind. I think yes, we are all very grown up and mature people here. Anyone can do a PhD. We'll talk more about it. So suitability and eligibility is something I definitely wish to talk about. Part-time versus full-time is a big question. A lot of people here, right, are working professionals, some really, really experienced, and some, with few years of experience. Niyati is still a student, right? So it's great to have, a mixed bag here. Kitna time lagta hai, and what after PhD, right? Like what's next for me, right? And then we'll touch a bit about, how do you go about selecting a topic, a guide, an institute, what is the selection process like? It will vary from university to university, but we'll touch upon that, right? So this is the scope of today's presentation. Before I proceed, uh, do you guys think this is good? Do you think there's something else I should touch upon? We'll anyways have an interactive session later on. Okay, cool, cool. Thank you for all that thumbs up. Okay, so yeah, let's start deep diving. So first thing is, PhD is new knowledge creation, right? This is something which always is the I would say the foundation, right? The spine of whatever you do. In fact, it is not just PhD; it is any kind of research, academic research that you do, right? Is new knowledge creation, right? So to give you an example, okay, okay, before that. So there is existing knowledge, right? There is knowledge we all know, right? We all come from different backgrounds. Maybe most of you are from design here, right? There is a certain understanding of design, certain understanding of engineering, arts, history, right? We have origami, right? All of that, right? We have a certain business. So there is an existing knowledge, right? And all of us in our day-to-day life, in our practice, apply whatever existing knowledge and skills that we have, which we have gained, which we have honed over years to fulfill a certain purpose, right? That purpose could be a client-related project. That purpose could be, imbibing skills in education as an educator, right? That purpose could be, applying those to kind of look at your startup, you know. It could be social impact. It could be anything, right? So you use that knowledge to fulfill a purpose, right? And that purpose will have different dimensions, right? There is definitely going to be a purpose of that I'm genuinely passionate about teaching, तो मुझे वो करना है. But there is also a purpose of कि, right? Um, घर घर भी तो चलाना है, right? So there is always going to be कि ये काम मैं जब करता हूँ तब तो मुझे सैलरी मिलती है, isn't it? So all of us, that is a principle of life. You apply certain knowledge, you gain more experience, you kind of fulfill a certain purpose, right? Right? Now, UG and PG, undergrad and postgraduate, is applied knowledge. जो थियोरीज ऑलरेडी बनी हुई है, राइट, उसको आप यूज करते हो टू काइंड ऑफ fulfill a certain purpose at your workplace, a certain purpose, in your maybe startup, or in your social impact mission, in your universities, in your schools, right? So you use that existing knowledge, you kind of pass on that knowledge, you kind of look at different pedagogical methods, or you kind of look at different approaches, strategy, processes to fulfill a certain purpose, right? But PhD is creating new knowledge, right? So matlab, in PhD what happens is what is existing should definitely be known, but you, as a researcher, as a PhD scholar, looking at what new knowledge can I create such that it will benefit many after my PhD is complete, right? So what is very important when you're thinking about a PhD is, and also PhD topic, we'll come to that, is that your topic should be such that आप अगर 4 साल 5 साल PhD करने वाले हो, उसका रेलेवेंस उन 5 सालों तक रहना चाहिए. इट मे बी अर्लियर ऑल्सो, बट वॉट एवर यू आर गोइंग टू क्रिएट, द न्यू knowledge that you're going to create, it should sustain, it should have a shelf life of at least another 5 years, 10 years, whatever, right? Why? Because once you finish your PhD and once you finish your research, it will become an existing knowledge. And then someone else will be using that knowledge, whoever is reading your research papers, your dissertation, right, to kind of fulfill their purpose. So you're not doing your PhD only to get a degree for yourself. You're actually doing a PhD so that someone else benefits out of it, right? So you're creating a knowledge, you're filling the funnel of knowledge, right? That is a fundamental difference, right? Um, so when you're now, how do you know PhD करनी किसमें चाहिए? We'll again come to that in a later on slide. But in that purpose of today, right? Let's say if I talk about myself, I came to academia and then I'm like, बच्चे डिजाइन के बारे में बहुत कुछ पढ़ रहे हैं, अच्छी बात है, स्किल्स डेवलप कर रहे हैं, बट अ लॉट ऑफ डिजाइनर्स, डिजाइन ग्रेजुएट्स आर गोइंग टू गो एंड स्टार्ट वर्किंग विद पीपल फ्रॉम नॉन डिजाइन बैकग्राउंड्स. उनको नंबर समझना पड़ेगा, उनको बिजनेस समझना पड़ेगा. तो क्या आज का डिजाइन एजुकेशन ये फुलफिल कर रहा है? टू एन एक्सटेंट यस, but there is a gap. So in my purpose as an educator, in my purpose of being a effective educator, I see that there is a gap. And therefore, my PhD topic is around how do I fill that gap as an educator by imbibing some of these non-design, more strategy and business skills, so that when my PhD is complete, maybe the other educators, can actually benefit out of it, or maybe the policymakers can benefit out of it, right? So that is, I hope, very simple framework, but this is essentially what it does. So let's take an example. We all know the 3 R's, right? School में भी पढ़ाया जाता है आजकल. Now this is, I'm sure, I've not gone into and looked into ये किसने, uh, who was the first person or who are the first scholars who came up with this. But there is someone who thought about these 3 R's of sustainability, isn't it? Now this is an existing knowledge. किसी ने ये knowledge produce किया है, बरसों पहले ये knowledge produce किया है, right? And it is here, right? Um, but now, as a research scholar or as a PhD, right, this cannot be, I mean, you can't be just working around this, right? So you might be wanting to look at, if you're doing a PhD, let's say around sustainability, these are just some examples, right? You might want to consider, let's say, what is the impact of how organizations are practicing these 3 R's, right? How is organization, practicing 3 R's when they're making products, let's say fashion industry, right? How are they practicing it? और कितना practice कर रहे हैं? उसका how are they, how much are they very interested to do this or to practice this? इसके answers नहीं है, right? So a good research or a good PhD research will always have really big focal questions जिसके आंसर्स एग्जिस्ट नहीं करेंगे. बिकॉज अगर उसके आंसर्स एग्जिस्ट कर रहे हैं, then it is an existing knowledge, isn't it? How will it be new knowledge, isn't it? So 3 hours is good, but you can look at it at a company level. You can look at it at a customer level. कि अगर how is organization practicing it और how are consumers practicing it. ठीक है, सबको पता है, सब पढ़ते हैं 3 hours क्या होता है, बट कितना हम घर में उसको प्रैक्टिस करते हैं, कितना हम अपने कम्युनिटी में उसको प्रैक्टिस करते हैं, कितना हम इंस्टीट्यूशंस में प्रैक्टिस करते हैं. ठीक है. सो there is no one who's done an assessment of that. Now you might wonder, ठीक है, it's a good question, but how does it help? Maybe if you are able to solve that first question, that how organizations or how people are practicing it, you would know that what is the delta. SDG goals अगर meet करने हैं और अगर only 10% or let's say very few people are practicing it or practicing it not in the right fashion, which means there is a gap, which means while SDG goals look good in those colorful slides, right, and a lot of those are put in the presentation, but what is the on ground reality, right? And maybe if a research like that is done, it gives a nation, or let's say it gives India a point or an agenda saying SDG डिफाइन तो कर दिया यूएन ने, बट ये नहीं बताया कि उसको फुलफिल कैसे करना है, प्रैक्टिस कैसे करना है. या इंडिया को अभी तक ये नहीं पता, इंडियंस को वी कैन मेक इट मोर इजियर फॉर देम टू प्रैक्टिस एसडीजीज एट होम और इन देयर कम्युनिटीज. Maybe that is what this research will lead to, isn't it? So anyway, I was talking about the outcome of the first one. Second could be again, what are the motivational, again, just I'm just building this, motivational factors in consumers that govern their preferences for, right? A lot of sustainable fashion brands exist nowadays, right? Khadi, of course, is one example, but there are so many startups coming in this way, and there is so much of greenwashing also happening, right? लोग कहते हैं कि brands हैं sustainable, but लोगों को तो अब लोगों को का motivation क्या है, right? Will I go and buy a certain sustainable fabric so that I want to make a statement, or is it because it feels comfortable? Is it because I'm driven towards the cause of sustainability? We don't, I mean, we may know it like individually, but if I take, let's say 2% of India's population is buying sustainable clothes, right? Whatever, how much ever sustainable they are, what is making them buy? And maybe after this research is done empirically, it helps me answers कि वो 2% को अगर 20% करना है तो brands को क्या करना होगा, राइट? या लेट्स से टेक्सटाइल मैन्युफैक्चरर्स को क्या करना होगा, या फैशन इंडस्ट्री को क्या करना होगा. दैट इज वेयर द आंसर्स विल कम फ्रॉम, राइट? बिकॉज दीज आर रियली मेटा क्वेश्चंस, राइट? सो दैट इज so these two examples are examples of new knowledge creation, right, and from that lens of sustainability. Okay. Clear? Shall I proceed? Cool. Okay. um, now now I have several slides like this, right? um क्यों करना है PhD, right? Of course, like there will be a lot of us who are like, I want to study book. मतलब ठीक है, यूजी कर ली, पीजी कर ली, right? Maybe you have started to work, but there is always a desire to learn more, right? All of us have, a lot of us have, right? There is this kind of a growth mindset that the world is changing too fast, right? And if I have to kind of be up to date, maybe just reading is not helping me. Or let's say I want to upskill myself. A lot of people in the in the industry are like 4 साल एक्सपीरियंस ले लिया है, राइट? मिलाप probably fits into there, like but फिर भी मुझे लगता है कि कुछ मुझे और सीखना है. क्या मैं सर्टिफिकेट कोर्स कर लूं, कि क्या मैं और एक मास्टर्स कर लूं, या मैं should I really think about something else? PhD is usually not in the consideration set, when you are thinking about upskill, right? Because again, that barrier, oh shit, 3 years, 5 years, बहुत काम करना पड़ेगा, बहुत patience चाहिए. But it can actually be in your consideration set. Okay. So the desire to learn more, right, is one reason. And maybe you're driven by some interesting topic, right? Again, given most of you are from design here and I come from a design background, of course, we all know AI. AI is not just about for design, but AI is being spoken of everywhere. Um, or let's say this whole strategy and business, right? I personally am very passionate about how design strategy, business design, right? All of these can actually transform the startup, I would say, ecosystem in India, right? I'm personally driven towards it. Also, what happens, right, guys, is once you spent a certain number of years working, right? Um, आपका एक ना एक certain specialization हो जाता है. You are a generalist. You work like a generalist, right? Like I mean, I've seen so many of you work closely, right? Like Rupika, Jitendra, Pankaj, right? Ankit. We of course are generalists. We know that how to execute projects, how to think big, right? All of that we know. But still, हम सबका एक domain है. हम सबका एक domain, एक specialization है, right? And in that specialization, maybe you're driven to go deeper into things, right? That is where a PhD can actually help you, right? And that is where you could say that, oh, uh, ठीक है, I've been practicing this for so many years, but if I'm able to find this specific answer to this specific question, it might help me transform my practice, or kind of take a detour and do something more interesting, right? um, a lot of people are also very driven towards certain cause, right? Like, Faiza and I have been working on a paper on stray animal welfare, right? That's a cause, right? There are people who would be working on waste management, women empowerment, right? Rural workforce. So if you're really passionate that you want to spend your life, I know Pankaj is very driven towards imbibing more life skills, yeah, deep reflective skills in people. Now you know that that is what you want to do for the rest of your life. That's a great, I would say, one of the great trigger and a great reason for you to do a PhD, राइट, बिकॉज जिस टॉपिक पे आप पैशनेट हो, ड्रिवन हो, उसमें अगर आप पीएचडी करोगे तो वो ऑटोमेटिकली आपकी पीएचडी, थिंग्स विल स्टार्ट फॉलिंग इन प्लेस, right? It will move in a certain pace versus taking a topic which may not fit into your daily scheme of things, right? um, and one advantage after you do a PhD in an area like that could be that once you finish your PhD and let's say you are affiliated to an organization or a university, you can actually apply for grants, right? There are several government, I mean, of course, there are a lot of grants from the government, different departments, but there are also grants from private, institutions like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? Or let's say UNICEF. So depending on what you are researching on, right, you could actually like for example, if you're working on, let's say, primary education uh, for the, let's say, rural kids, that kind of a project would definitely seek, have a lot of grants flowing in, right, from the education department, right? Of course, it requires some research and all of it, but I'm just giving you a hint that if you're really passionate about something, towards some social cause or something, something, doing a PhD can actually give you a benefit in a very, very long term. And this is the last thing I write, okay, and sadly, right, I mean, with let's say educators, there are several universities who push you to do a PhD, right? And they push you to do a PhD because they want you to they want to kind of establish a certain kind of a cadre ratio, कि हमारे पास 2 प्रोफेसर्स हैं, 5 एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर हैं, 15 असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर्स हैं, राइट, और इतने PhD हैं. um, so sadly, I would say, I don't know, I don't want to quote any facts here, but significant number of people, especially the ones I come across in India, do a PhD because it's a mandate. हमको जॉब करनी है, अगर हम PhD नहीं करेंगे तो हम ग्रो नहीं करेंगे हायरार्की में, फिर हम वही फिर हम वही 18-20 घंटे हफ्ते के पढ़ाते रहेंगे, इसलिए PhD कर रहे हैं. ठीक है, I mean, that should not be a primary motive, I feel, right? And if you have answers for the first three things that I spoke about, right? Your interest, your passion, your curiosity, your ability to, your drive to learn more. I think that is a very strong force for you to do a PhD than this. This should actually be, let's say, an effect. This cannot be a reason, cannot be a primary thing to do it, right? Okay, right. Now, how do you know if like what I don't want to use the word saying ki who is an ideal persona to do a PhD, right? I think एक बार मन बना लिया, right? So you will be able to do it, right? This sounds philosophical, but that is how it is, right? Once you have a very strong motivation and trigger, you will do it. But still, um, embracing ambiguity. And why ambiguity? Because we are talking about creating new knowledge, right? We there is an area, there is a bubble which which no one has discovered, and there are that within that bubble, what should be there also is not yet identified, right? So therefore, while it is important to study and gain knowledge from existing sources, it is also important to explore that what is not existing in this domain, right? um for that same example of sustainability. Okay, someone has entered the room. Just a sec. Ah, Siddharth. Okay. So I was saying that the in every domain, every discipline, there is always going to be several areas जिसपे काम नहीं हुआ है, right? Why do you, I mean, why have the economies, why has the world grown, right? Has evolved. Why is there so much of development happening? So much of development is happening because there are new opportunities, there are new areas. There is someone who's thinking about what's next, what's missing, कहाँ पे gap है, right? That is exactly what is the role of a researcher, correct? So you have to embrace, you have to start liking what doesn't exist, right? You have to start liking that process of how do I arrive at something which is not existing, right? So embracing ambiguity is very important. Of course, like I said, very curious, being very curious. If you are someone who who has, one is having a ability to ask the question, but also having a having that dare to ask a question, right? And even in our day-to-day conversations, we will, if you are someone who's not just carefully listening or reading and analyzing, but also thinking, but why, but how, right? You're asking those questions, right? um, AI in design, right? Okay, we all know that what AI is able to do, and there are these questions about AI will replace designers. But I mean, how many of us are actually thinking, why is it really, right? ये questions आते हैं आपके दिमाग में, right? Is this really true? Let me go and figure out, right? So if you have that curiosity, if you have that ability to ask questions, and you have that dare, right? You have that, I would say, that power to ask the questions. It'll help you in your PhD, right? Because PhD, half of PhD, or I would say at least one third of your PhD journey is about figuring out that right questions. Once those questions are figured out, your journey, once your goalpost is there, you know what you want to achieve eventually, right? Critical thinking, right? So I mean, I of course have a pointer on, I feel, and I again, so everything that I'm talking about today is purely from my experience, right? And again, this may not be the only way or the only thing, right? But I should tell you that I somewhere feel that once you've spent a certain time in the industry, once you've gathered a certain level of experience, and then when you do your PhD, that certain level can be 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years. Um, it actually helps you, it actually helps you to uh, quickly figure out what do you want to do in your PhD, right? It helps you arrive at those questions, um, you know, very quickly. And why does it happen is because, and I'm sure most of you will agree here, or all of you will agree here, and if you agree, give me a thumbs up, that the more experience you gain, right, the better critical thinker you become, right? I mean, we keep evolving every day, right? With different projects, different people that we interact with, different contexts, different companies we work with, different clients we work with. So all of us, become uh, the critical thinking in us keeps evolving, I feel, right? Um, and when I'm saying this, I don't mean that people who do their PhDs very early in their careers, immediately after their postgrad, are not good thinkers. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that you are better placed to start your PhD journey and to figure out what do you want to do in the PhD journey if you've gained a certain level of experience. Okay. So critical thinking is about analyzing information, looking at the patterns, extracting the right meaning out of the existing knowledge. That is what critical thinking is. So while the message so far in my presentation is about, PhD is about creating new knowledge, it is not that you are not going to be looking at existing knowledge. आपको जब पता होगा कि कितना काम ऑलरेडी हो चुका है उस डोमेन में, तभी आप नया नॉलेज ढूंढ पाओगे, right? If you like, how do you know it's new until you have explored enough in that domain to say that yes, इस पे काम हुआ है, इस पे काम नहीं हुआ है, which is a gap, research gap. And to analyze existing knowledge, right, to look at what is already uh, there and what is not there, is where you need that critical thinking skills. And if you think you are good at critical thinking, right, and I believe most of you are, and experience makes you better critical thinker, like I said, then you are really suited to start this journey. It makes one of the very, very essential skill sets, I would say, to have. एंड जिनकी क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग मे बी उतनी इवॉल्व नहीं होती है, वो पीएचडी करते करते हो जाती है. That is an advantage. नहीं, yeah, that is what PhD does to you. Like, what does PhD makes you? It also makes you a bit critical thinker, right? So critical thinking is definitely going to evolve, you know, at whatever stage it is in you. I think all of you know reading and writing, comprehension. Uh, I am not a very avid reader, but ever since I started PhD, one is कि जब existing knowledge अगर आपको जानना है तो आपको पढ़ना तो पड़ेगा, right? And initially you will find that, oh shit, research papers पढ़ना is like, Faiza can relate, right? Is my God, वो बस black and white sheets of 10 pages, 20 pages, पैराग्राफ ही पैराग्राफ है. बाप रे, मतलब इतनी पढ़ाई तो स्कूल में नहीं की थी, राइट? सो कैसे करेंगे, राइट? और जब आपको पीएचडी करना है तो कम से कम आपको 100, 150, डिपेंडिंग ऑन किस डोमेन में कितना काम हुआ है, उतना पढ़ना तो पड़ता है. बट यू नो व्हाट, आई फिगर्ड आउट माय ओन स्टाइल of reading and also analyzing and putting the information. We will talk about this at some other point, right? But all of you will discover your own style, right? Also, there is a way to go about reading research papers. सब कुछ नहीं पढ़ना होता है, राइट? तो कहाँ पे प्रायोरिटाइज करना है, एटसेट्रा, राइट? सो देयर इज अ वे टू डू इट. सो डोंट गेट टू ओवरवेल्म्ड सेइंग दैट, ओ शिट, बहुत पढ़ना पड़ता है. पढ़ना तो पड़ेगा, राइट? यूजी स्कूल से यूजी डिग्री में पढ़ाई तो ज्यादा की थी ना, फिर यूजी से पीजी करते समय भी और ज्यादा पढ़ाई की थी, राइट? तो पढ़ना तो पड़ेगा, उसका तो वो नहीं है. बट पढ़ने को इंटरेस्टिंग कैसे बना सकते हैं, राइट? दैट आई थिंक इज समथिंग वेयर आई थिंक मे बी सम ऑफ इट I can tell you, some of it you can find it on the internet, but I think you all will figure out your own ways of making, if you're very passionate and driven towards the PhD purpose, right? So that is one. टाइम एंड पेशेंस बहुत ज्यादा चाहिए होता है. um, is the pace okay? I mean, anyone wants to, I mean, I can take a quick pause. Are we going fine? Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Okay, cool, cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, so now, time and patience, right? So here what happens is, I think one question which is there in everyone's head is, कितना टाइम लगता है, राइट? सो कितना टाइम लगता है, इसका आंसर मेरे पास नहीं है, इसका आंसर आपके खुद के पास है, राइट? और वो जो पीएचडी गाइडलाइंस बनती हैं इंस्टीट्यूट की, उसमें वो आंसर है कि अगर आपने, एक चीज आपको मैं बताता हूँ सबसे पहले. आई एम परस्यूइंग माय पीएचडी फ्रॉम आईआईटी दिल्ली. आईआईटी दिल्ली के आई कार्ड का वैलिडेशन, वैलिडिटी, नॉट वैलिडेशन, वैलिडिटी इज 7 years. ठीक है? लाइक दैट्स लाइक अ हार्ड पॉइंट देयर, कि मतलब अगर आपने 7 साल में नहीं की, तो हो सकता है आपको धक्का मार के बाहर निकाल दे, राइट?
मतलब 7 साल तो
वो ऐसा कर.
लगता ही है सब में।
एग्जैक्टली, राइट. और ऐसा नहीं है कि निकाल देते हैं, राइट, बट आई आई वुड नॉट वांट टू टेल यू दैट कि और भी लंबी हो सकती है जर्नी, राइट? पार्ट टाइम स्कॉलर्स कैन टेक एनीवेयर बिटवीन 5 years to 7 years, maybe more, because for part-time scholars, 5 years is like a minimum time. You can't finish your PhD before 5 years. In fact, अगर आप, there are a lot of universities who will say कि हम 3 साल में, 3.5 साल में आपकी PhD करवा देंगे जॉब के साथ. I would never encourage you to consider that. हाँ, अगर आपको वो, आपका पीएचडी करने का रीजन ये है कि आपको, वो एक क्वालिफिकेशन चाहिए, एंड आप, योर यूनिवर्सिटी वांट्स टू पुट अनदर मेंबर सेइंग कि हमारे पास और एक पीएचडी फैकल्टी है, ठीक है, आई मीन बी इट. बट इफ यू आर रियली ड्रिवन टू डू समथिंग इंटरेस्टिंग, आई वुड से डोंट. उप्स, रूपिका ड्रॉप्ड आउट, आई गेस. जस्ट अ सेकंड. हाँ. सो सो यस, 5 years फॉर अ पार्ट टाइम स्कॉलर इज मिनिमम, उससे पहले नहीं होगा. द फास्टेस्ट अ फुल टाइम स्कॉलर कैन फिनिश अ पीएचडी इज 3 years, द फास्टेस्ट, राइट? एंड शायद 10 में से या 20 में से शायद एक या दो लोग ऐसे होते हैं, right? I think a good time that I have come across people finish PhD full-time scholars is I think about 3.5 4 years, which is considered very good. But even full-timers can take about 6 to 7 years sometimes, right? So it is, it's purely about, it depends on how are you pacing it. It depends on how much, sorry, it depends on how much accessible is your PhD supervisor, right? It depends on uh, how easily, not easily actually, how are you able to plan your field work. Sometimes you end up choosing a topic जहाँ पे accessing your respondents becomes difficult. Let's say you're doing a study around people with visual impairment, right? And आपको blind school में जाके अगर research करना है, it is going to take time to do, your take permissions, build a questionnaire, keeping the sensitivity in mind and all of it, right? So it takes time. So how do you pace it is very important. Therefore, you need to have patience and keep one thing in mind: the tempo of your PhD is not going to remain consistent throughout. Okay, मैं जितना भी आप, I mean, my job here is to encourage and motivate you, but I also don't want to, give you a very, I would say, a rosy picture. I started my PhD during COVID time, and for the first 3 semesters, 4 semesters, Jitendra knows about it, I was zooming. Okay, I had a lot of time in hand, and I was like, kind of, I took off like a, with a Mach speed. Okay, but then there are going to be situations, even if you're a full-time scholar, where you may at times feel, you would want a break. You might feel very tired. Okay, so please do allow your PhD journey to have those breaks, right? It's important. If you wish to step back, step back. If you wish to take a break for a few months, take a break. आप पेपर लिखोगे, पब्लिश करने जाओगे, सबमिट करोगे जर्नल में, वो पेपर रिजेक्ट होगा, राइट? एंड देन यू विल फील वेरी लो. यू आर लाइक, ओ शिट, आई स्पेंट 1 year writing this paper, my paper got rejected. It's going to happen, right? So that time and patience and remaining, believing in yourself, remaining strong, is very, very important in this journey, right? And
I have a question. Can I ask now or later?
yes, yeah, Ketan, go ahead.
So, Shamit, I think these are so valid points, right? What you're talking about.
Yeah,
So a couple of questions in my mind, and maybe it's not in that random, how you started. And
yeah.
one question is immediately basis what you're talking now is that what I've heard is also depend upon the project guide, you know,
Hmm,
especially for people like me, okay, who are possibly planning to think to do PhD part time, because
hmm,
Monday to Friday there is a job to do, right?
yeah, yeah.
Now what happens is that very clearly that Monday to Friday you need to focus on something else, whereas Saturday, Sunday you have
Hmm,
PhD. And with all of the efforts, you want to finish it in 5 years, 7 years, or maybe even 3 years, right?
hmm, hmm.
Uh, I
Yeah.
generally have heard this, because I've been talking to people. In fact, I was talking to Sandeep. I know Sandeep well, Sandeep Roy, and then I
Oh,
kind of,
yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
yeah, and that's where the apprehension is that, and I'm using this word apprehension. Is it depend upon your project guide, you know, when you do
yeah.
your PhD.
So
And
I'll answer this, Ketan, when I come. There is a small piece on selecting a guide. So
oh,
I'll
sorry.
definitely answer this at that point. Okay. So if you
Yeah.
can just hold on till then,
Yes, yes.
and I'll talk from my experience again. So we'll surely answer this. Yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Commitment and consistency. I think again, it connects to what Ketan just was talking about. And you'll find that you'll figure out your own cycle, right? Like, let's say 12 months in a year, you'll figure out that in those 12 months, maybe there are phases where you are very, very, I would say, you have a lot of time. You're very, you've been spending a lot of time. You're very involved in your research work, but then suddenly something happens. Maybe there is a new project that has come up. Maybe there is, a teaching load which has gone up. Maybe there is a personal, let's say, travel that has come up. So there are going to be those, sinusoidal things happening, right? But effectively, what you have to do, and that's a cycle. So you also need to learn yourself, that instead of allowing that phase to kind of play on you, that oh shit, 15 दिन से PhD का काम नहीं हुआ है, 1 महीने से नहीं हुआ है. So instead of thinking of that, you should figure out a way that what makes you trigger and jump back to the peak of to your of your work. So how can you quickly reboot, regenerate? What makes you do that? For me, I think one thing that helps is maybe when I go to IIT Delhi and I talk to my professors or I talk to my peers, right? Um, at times it might be pressure, but it actually helps, right? Sometimes changing an environment helps. Um, so you have to find, that is something that you will be able to find yourself, that if there are going to be these cycles of बहुत अच्छा काम हो रहा है, वो शिट फिर स्लो हो गया काम, तो वो स्लो से फिर से अच्छे काम की तरफ बढ़ने के लिए आपका मोटिवेशन क्या है, राइट? मे बी इट इज अबाउट traveling and probably going to a holiday destination, right? Jitendra, did I just give you a business idea here or a trigger?
Now that you've
So
mentioned it, yes. Yes, yes, yes.
I think so. By the way, guys, sorry, it is slightly off the cuff, but Jitendra, has beautiful property in Lonavala and Khandala, and we'll talk about it maybe towards the end. So Jitendra, you could actually offer some interesting packages to PhD scholars to to break away
Please
from
share
their
the
Monday.
discount for this audience.
Yeah, some
Yes,
special
of course. We have
discounts to this
one of
audience.
our properties is actually only for academics and artists. We've been hosting art residencies in one of our properties. It's a I mean, we can talk about it later. Yeah, definitely. But
Yeah,
thanks
yeah,
so much
we'll connect back. We'll connect back.
for advertising
Yeah,
me here. Thank you so much.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah, this is what critical thinking can do to me. I can get very critical thinking and I can connect the dots anywhere. So we'll come back to that, Jitendra. Okay, moving on. I think this I touched upon, that if you have prior experience, it is going to definitely help you. But I've put a plus and a minus. right? It will definitely help you, analyze information, analyze existing information, figure out research questions. But I have also come across people, and again, I don't want to name people, and that's not important. Um, बहुत ज़्यादा experience also creates a lot of bias. आपकी सोचने की दीवारें मोटी हो जाती हैं. फिर कई बार I have also heard that there are research scholars with a lot of experience जो PhD गाइड को ही समझा रहे होते हैं कि ऐसे करेंगे वैसे करेंगे. उसमें गाइड कौन है वो फिर कंफ्यूजन हो जाता है, right? What at whatever stage you're starting your PhD, even if it's after 20 years of experience or let's say 30 years of experience, I think you should have, like I said, you should embrace ambiguity. You should not take things for granted. आपने आपने जिस भी एरिया में काम किया होगा पिछले 20 साल 25 साल 15 साल, आपको you will have to, I am not saying that you have to forget, but you'll have to keep room to add more knowledge to it, and not be, your approach should not be कि अरे मैं तो इतना जानता हूँ. अगर आप इतना जानते हो और आपको नया कुछ जानना नहीं है तो आप PhD कभी नहीं कर पाओगे, right? So that is very, very important, and that's a mistake. I would say not a mistake, but that's the kind of, I would say, attitude and mindset that a lot of experienced people have. So I think use your advantage for the right things in the PhD. So, okay, this makes you a better thinker. I spoke about it. Um, uh, what will PhD do? PhD will, it has happened with me. Okay, I think I have uh, I have learned this. Um, I always enjoyed the process of synthesizing information and drawing, extracting insights. But I think that this PhD journey, it has actually helped me ask even better questions, right? And since I'm an educator, when I think, Rupika, your comment on LinkedIn on this point, when I interact with students and when I look at their work, right, um, it's a little easier for me to understand that वो student क्या सोच रहा था जब वो project कर रहा था, तो उसने किस तरह सोचा और मैं उसको किस तरह और सोचने के लिए direction दे सकता हूँ, right? And that's a See, I may go a little deep. Maybe we're talking very specific about the education context here, but it's important that all of us can be jury members for any, design or any project. And being a jury member, you can look at an outcome and you can comment on the outcome. But that ability to understand that how did that student or how did that team arrive at what they did, and in that approach, what they could have done better or what new approaches they could have tried, that feedback for me has gotten better, with this ability to ask the right questions. Because, like I said, in PhD, arriving at the research questions, research objectives, okay, takes a lot of time. Again, without generalizing, I should tell you that um, a lot of PhD scholars who begin their journey in the beginning, okay, they face a lot of challenges to arrive at the research question itself. And therefore, I said that people with experience have a slightly better hand. Niyati, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question about the same. So right now
Yeah,
I am in my undergrad and
yeah,
I am thinking about pursuing a PhD, but my main question is when to start. Because as you said, prior
mm,
experience might help. So
yeah,
the confusion is between should I start it right after masters or should I work for a couple of years, say 5, 6 years,
yeah.
and then start it?
Yeah, sure. Again, I've noted this down. I'll answer this towards the end. I think a few more slides to go, and then we'll just park this question. I'll come to it, okay, and
Oh,
we'll talk
so
about it.
thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Better comprehension skills. I think this. Uh, I think couple of things to tell you here is, like I said, I've not, before starting my PhD, I was not so much into reading and writing. Okay. But let me tell you. and maybe Faiza can share her experiences, that when you're writing any research paper, okay, and अगर आपने एक paragraph या even let's say एक sentence आपने draft कर लिया ना, based on something that you've read or something that you have in your mind, right? That aha moment is that sense of achievement is very, very, unique. It's and that those smaller sense of achievements, with that one sentence to one paragraph to one page to, to your first research paper, that uh, you know that actually keeps fueling your journey. So Faiza, maybe again, just so that I take some rest and drink water, why don't you very quickly tell us your first research paper experience?
Sure. Thank you so much, Shamit sir, for putting me. So, yeah, this was the first time I was writing the research paper, and a lot of things were new. And I saw there was so much difference in the research we do in college because I was right out of the college, and there was some research that was done in college. It's so different when we are actually writing the research paper. There are so many things that are involved into it. And like again, going back to what Shamit sir was mentioning, reading the literature review, it becomes really critical. Okay, you have to read the valid research papers. Now, how do you comprehend it? And how do you write it? I think a lot of time it was again going back and forth. And recently, me and Shamit sir were having a discussion, and we're like, okay, but why did we not realize this earlier? And then also things of, okay, we wrote this, and also realizing when you're just writing it. So I think that really comes with experience. When we started out, it was okay on a blank slate. But again, I would say when I started writing it, and now if I were to go back and write that same research paper again, I can say I would approach it very differently. And also the things I would use or the lines I would write would be also so much different. So that
Hmm. Cool. Thanks, Faiza. Right. So I think another 5 minutes and then I should be done. Um, yeah, I think I did mention this that it helps you reflect back on what you've already read. It helps you frame questions about what is missing in what you've already read, and therefore because you have that right questions, it gives you a right direction on where to move or how to go about it, right? So I think I'll leave this. Patience also, I think I've touched upon. So it definitely teaches you a lot of patience. One thing that will happen is once you start your PhD journey, you will come across people who will ask you और कैसी चल रही है PhD, कब कब खत्म हो रही है, right? um, you will have to learn to swallow that, with the it's like a bitter pill that you have to swallow, right? Because जो questions पूछ रहे हैं वो बेचारे मासूम है, उनको क्या पता, right? No, again, with no hard, feelings here. Um, because, UG 3 साल 4 साल, PG 1 साल या 2 साल, right? तो PhD का actually definite time होता नहीं है, right? It could be anywhere between 3 years to 7 years to maybe 8 years. So when someone asks you, right, मुझे तो लोग सेकेंड ईयर से पूछना शुरू कर दिए थे, PhD कब खत्म हो रही है, right? ठीक है, उनकी गलती नहीं है, दर्द होगा, राइट? यू विल फील उच आउच, मतलब कैसे समझाएं, बट you have to, that's something that you have to learn, right? And even right now, like, after completing 8 years, for me, maybe I'm still about maybe 3 semesters away, right, from finishing and completing my dissertation. um, you will know, or you should know how much control are you of your PhD, right? And as long as you feel that you are in control, right? There may be times where you may feel a little out of control, but as long as you're largely in control, these questions will not bother you. And therefore, I said it will teach you patience, right? कोई भी बड़ी चीज, राइट, आपको आसानी से नहीं मिलती है, राइट? एंड PhD इज अ बिग थिंग, राइट? एंड व्हेन आई से इट्स अ बिग थिंग, आई एम नॉट सेइंग बिकॉज of that doctor tag that will help you, or that aura with that tag, but I think because it will make you a much better and a much bigger thinker, right? And it will help you in your professional journeys. Okay. Now very important question, I think, right? Part-time versus full-time, right? Um, I think I see more part-time people here, but I think, I'll still talk about the thing. So, duration I've already mentioned, part-time, full-time, what is the typical duration? I would say that, there are advantages of full-time, right? The advantages are that you are always on campus. You're always closer to your peers. You're always closer to, all the resources and the facilities in an institution. You're always closer to not just your professor, but also professors and let's say educators from other departments. Sometimes your PhD may not be from one area, right? It may be a culmination of, let's say, social science and design, or let's say engineering and technology, or whatever, right? And you might need, help. At times, you might want to go and talk to some other faculty about something, right? Um, you might want to discuss, how social sciences approaches their PhD, because they are really good with their qualitative and quantitative methodologies, and even, I mean, more quantitative also. Whereas in design, we are more qualitative in nature, right? So ये जो सारी चीजें हैं, like I still feel that there is a huge um, while I may call myself a good researcher, right, but that is more from a design lens. अगर मैं design thinking research करूँ तो I'll see that I can do that fairly well. But if I say that if I have to do a research on a new academic area, I would say I can do qualitative, but I am not good at quant. Most designers are not good at quant, and sometimes quant is required, to empirically, kind of um, validate or find certain things, right? So peers from other domain always help. Okay. Accessibility is, yeah, that was the other thing. I would also say for part-timers, when you're choosing an institute, accessibility of the institution is also very important, right? Like IIT Guwahati versus IIT Delhi versus IIT Kanpur versus IIT Bombay, right? अगर आपका वर्क प्लेस बैंगलोर है, या अगर आपका वर्क प्लेस पुणे है, और आपको IIT गुवाहाटी या आपको IIT दिल्ली ऑप्शन मिल रहा है, आपको IIT गुवाहाटी ऑप्शन मिल रहा है, right? You will have to also keep that as one of your consideration, because साल में आपको वहाँ कम से कम 2 बार तो जाना पड़ेगा, right? Sometimes for administrative purposes, sometimes for very, academic purposes. So all that is important. If you're a full-time scholar, you also get TA. You are also a TA, a teaching assistant to the professor under whom you're doing your PhD. And if you're a TA, most institutions will also give you a stipend. These days in India, the stipends are decent. Like, IITs may you get about 45K, roughly around 45K, as TA ship, right? And you, of course, are staying in a hostel, so all of that matters. Okay, now that was the first piece. I think the next 3, 4 slides are on topic. Okay, and we'll spend more time on this later on in a different session. But how do you arrive at a topic and research question? So there is a research area. There is a from where you kind of narrow down to a topic, to an aim, to a question. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're passionate about automobiles, right? And Milap mentioned that he worked with Hero Motor Corp, right? Now let's say you know that automotive में करना है, कुछ तो मुझे automotive में करना है, ठीक है? Now you have to then start reading a little bit, right? And maybe there is a certain area within automotive that you're passionate about. Let's say it is end of life. कि जब गाड़ियां अपनी used life खत्म कर देती हैं तो फिर उसका क्या होता है, right? So maybe it is end of life of a product. Then you go and start researching more on end of life, right? And then you arrive at your research aim कि मुझे ये जानना है कि इंडियन ऑटोमोबाइल मैन्युफैक्चरर्स एंड ऑफ लाइफ के लिए क्या कर रहे हैं, और कहाँ कहाँ पे उनको चैलेंजेस फेस हो रही हैं, और क्या मैं कर सकता हूँ थ्रू माय रिसर्च टू मेक श्योर कि देयर इज अ maybe a suitable guideline or a framework to help those organizations arrive at a more effective and convenient end of life process. So that becomes your research aim, and then you frame research questions from there. Okay, I mean, just an example, right? So topic, say a smaller subtopic, say you figure out the research gap, and from that research gap you arrive at your research questions. Okay. I can go more deep into this, but maybe right now is not the time, because we're right now discussing more about the entry barriers and what is PhD and how can you go about enrolling for it. Um, Important thing is selecting a guide and selecting an institute. So I think this is where I think Ketan was talking about. So very important. Now there are two approaches, guys. Okay, before I go there are two approaches. One is you select a guide, select an expert, and then you enroll for a PhD. Second is you select an institute and then you start your PhD. Now I'll tell you, according to me, if you're starting your PhD early in your career, and when I say early in your career, I don't want to define age and anything, but I'm just saying that let's say if you in your mind feel that आप सही टाइम पे PhD शुरू कर रहे हो, always find the guide or the expert first. I didn't do it this way because I started my PhD at my late 30s and I wanted to do a PhD in a good institute in India. And I first ended up taking an admission in IIT and then figuring out who in that IIT institute is better for my topic. But if you're starting your PhD early in your career and you know that you're interested towards, let's say, working around sustainability or whatever, let's say animal welfare, rapid prototyping, बहुत आपको इंटरनेट सर्च करना पड़ेगा, आपको गूगल स्कॉलर, लिंक्डइन, all of these forums you'll have to search to figure out who, like, if who are those top 3, 4, 5 people who are in the globe, who are working in that area. And when I say in the globe, I'm assuming you are okay to do your PhD abroad as well. And then you come across that there is this faculty in, let's say, in Dyson College, in UK, who's doing some great work on sustainability and sustainable materials. And then you figure out another, Carnegie Mellon में there is US में कोई एक professor है वो कर रहे हैं. Approach them, write a very nice email with your background, with your experience, and with your with a small piece on motivation, like more like not a statement of purpose, but in an email, please mention why are you passionate about your PhD, and write an email. Agar that professor, if that professor is interested and is very aligned to what you wish to do, and usually most professors are. Professors को भी अपना credentials पढ़ाना होता है, उनको भी research जारी रखना होता है, उनको भी वो citations, impact of the research matters. So they need good candidates. Write to them. When you write to them, most likely, most times they reply saying that let's connect, let's talk more. If they're abroad, get onto a Zoom call. If they're in India, go and meet them. Okay. I went and met Professor Atanu Ghosh from S.J. Mehta School of Management because my area was more in design and management. I actually wrote to a professor in IIT Bombay and I actually met him. Okay. Unfortunately, he was retiring the next year, so things didn't work out. That's a separate story. Please write. Okay. And then that is like a matchmaking process. And once that is there, once that agreement is there, then you have to apply. Then the professor will say you apply. And when you apply, that professor will, and assuming you do well in the application process and interview rounds, that professor will be very keen to have you. So the professor will bid for you, saying that I want, this candidate to work with me, right? And if everyone in the panel votes that yes, he's a good candidate or she is a good candidate, then that happens, and then you start your journey. For people who are starting the PhD a little late, I'm not saying that this is not the right way. You can also go this path. But in my case, it was very difficult to find a design faculty or a design professor working in this area in India. So I ended up, and I had liabilities or I had reasons to stay back in India. So I didn't want to go abroad. So I said, मुझे अगर design में PhD करना है तो IITs ही सबसे best जगह है. Even NID, the PhD program is not good. If you're interested in NID, we can talk about it later on, but don't go to NID to do your PhD is what I'll say. The program is still maturing. So I applied to IIT and then I said that, okay, chalo mera IIT Delhi or IIT Kanpur ho gaya. Now let me see which professor in IIT Delhi comes closer to my interest area. And then I wrote to the professor. Okay, so that is how it worked in my case. It can also be that you figure out a professor in that particular IIT and you say that, sir, I want to apply to IIT Delhi and I want to work in this area. उनसे बात करो, talk to the professor and then go about doing it. Okay. So, but the best way is to find an expert. First thing, be clear about किसमें PhD करनी है. frame a nice communication channel. I mean, a communication, draft or an email, approach the faculty, talk to the faculty, understand the faculty's interest, and then do it. Couple of things you need to read about the faculty you're approaching. उनके खुद के कितने रिसर्च पेपर्स हैं, उनके आप कम से कम 2-3 रिसर्च पेपर पढ़िए. Please read. When you are meeting the professor, you should have read at least a few papers so that you talk the language that that professor also understands and that professor knows that you are really interested. You're not just saying कि मुझे sustainability में interest है. So when you say that, Professor, I read your recent research, paper on XYZ, and, I was quite interested to work on a similar area, or I want to, look at the same research, I want to look at it from this aspect or this angle, professor will get very excited. Okay. And आप Google Scholar elsewhere, there are several of these, research databases where you can find these papers. Also look at कितने citations मिले हैं professor के research को. Okay, so the paper, if the paper, professor has published, let's say 30 papers, and it has received only 100 citations, maybe I'm not saying that professor is not good or his research is not good, but keep a track of how much his research papers are cited, his or her, and उनका H index क्या है. You don't need to get into this complexity, but higher the H index, the higher the impact of the research that that professor is producing. Okay. Talk to some of the research scholars, if you know, or if through friend, and to understand how is that professor. Unka, there are some professors who are known to not pay enough attention to part-time scholars. Okay, again, I don't want to name. Sometimes you may come across professors who are like, ठीक है, part-time वालों को time लगेगा. So, there may be some professors who may be very particular about research papers. कि मुझे तो top quality का ही research paper चाहिए, 4 paper होंगे तभी होगा. Minimum requirement is minimum of 2. So these things you will have to research on, before you approach the faculty. Like I said, communicate, discuss, align. Selecting an institute, please look at the history of the institute. PhD program कब शुरू हुआ है, institute कब शुरू हुआ है, faculty के credentials. I have already mentioned. What kind of resources the institute offers to a PhD scholar. PhD scholars need a lot of resources. Library is one thing, physical library, but digital बहुत सारे resources चाहिए होते हैं आपको. So have they subscribed to Scopus, elsewhere, Taylor and Francis, let's say Science Direct. Turnitin is a software जो आपको plagiarism check के लिए काम आता है, right? So you really need to know that what all does the university provide. I've come across, universities, again, without naming them, जो PhD program शुरू कर देते हैं, but उनके पास basic resources ही नहीं होते हैं. And then scholars have a really hard time. And these are the universities who have mandated कि जाओ PhD कर लो, किसी भी तरह कर लो, बस PhD कर लो 3 साल में, हमको अपने, NAC criteria meet करने हैं. Please be very, very careful and wary of these institutions. Okay. Yeah, I think rest I have already covered. इसके बाद क्या होता है? Then you, like, after the matchmaking is done and common areas of interest have arrived at, you fill up a form, you submit a proposal. Some places will also ask you for an SOP, statement of purpose. So keep this ready, right? You have to proposal is how to build a proposal is something I'll touch upon in the next session. For those who are interested, some places will have a written test, especially the engineering and social sciences में written test होता है. IITs में तो होता है because बहुत सारे applications आते हैं. In design, at least when I appeared, there was no written test. There was a direct interview with a panel, right? So this is typically how it works. Yeah, I think this is my last slide. And again, this is just one of the thoughts, but depending on the feedback and suggestions that I receive from you guys, I'm happy to take this further from here on. I think I spoke for quite a long, but now it's the time to hear questions and take questions and answer. So yeah, thank you for very patient listening. That's definitely one sign that you all can be good research scholars, right? You were very patient. Yes. I think I should go in the order. So I think maybe let me start with Ketan. Right, the question around PhD guide. It definitely, so your PhD guide is a very, very crucial aspect of your PhD, and therefore I mentioned that the personality is very, very important. Personality आप एक मीटिंग में नहीं जज कर सकते हो. Therefore it's important to get a feel, get some more background information about your PhD scholar, sorry, about your PhD guide through other scholars, maybe through your network. Also look at very important, very, very important, कि उन गाइड के पास पहले कौन स्कॉलर्स थे और वो आज क्या कर रहे हैं. Right? If
Yeah.
someone is a very senior prof, he or she would have guided other scholars as well, right? So please check that. It really matters. Having said that, it doesn't mean that कोई अगर आप किसी गाइड के फर्स्ट PhD स्कॉलर हो, that doesn't mean कि आपको उनके साथ काम नहीं करना चाहिए. In fact, a lot of young faculties in good institutions are, I would say, a little more open-minded, right? They are willing to also take risks and go into new areas, whereas sometimes very, very senior professors may have a very, I would say, narrow view. So there are advantages, disadvantages, बट आपको बात करनी पड़ेगी, यानी आपको थोड़ा खुद रिसर्च करना पड़ेगा. आपको उनके रिसर्च पेपर पढ़ने पड़ेंगे, एटलीस्ट 3-4 रिसर्च पेपर पढ़ने पड़ेंगे. उनका रिप्रेजेंटेशन किन 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 कमिटीज में है, वो किस किस बोर्ड्स में है, क्या पढ़ाते हैं. ऑल ऑफ दिस इज गोइंग टू मैटर. केतन.
Yeah. So, Shamit,
Yeah.
for this, my other question also was related to the topic, which also then ties back to the guide. Okay. Now, I'll tell you, in my mind, I have this topic which sort of I wanted to pursue was on the impact of AI on full funnel marketing. Okay. It's a very broad based topic. I've not researched it, but just मेरे दिमाग में आया था कि
What marketing?
it's
Can you repeat? What marketing?
full funnel marketing. So you
Full
start.
funnel marketing.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you the challenge is that if I go to a professor or sorry, a guide who has 25-30 years of experience, but and that's my assumption is that his experience on AI will be limited because AI के ऊपर इतने paper work शायद नहीं होंगे, right?
Yeah.
In that kind of a scenario,
Hmm.
should I approach a project guide who is slightly younger, maybe 5 years or 8 years of experience, because of the exposure what that person will have? So I'll tell you how I'm just loosely translating this, Shamit, is that today what is happening, and not today actually, 5 years back, if you see the digital boom happened 15-20 years back, right? And if you see large big companies, the moment when they started recruiting digital specialists, predominantly all were younger. Why? Because those were the people who were actually exposed to digital at the first instance and they know it, right? Unlike people who have been 20-25 years of experience, आपको पता है कि शायद इनको डिजिटल इतना नहीं आएगा. So do I need to keep the option open of selecting a guide who is just 2 or 3 or 4 years of experience? Okay. Or should I go with someone who is 20-25 years
Yeah.
of experience?
Yeah. I think so. Two things here. One is, so I'll pick up the generic query here, right, and not so much of the subject matter expertise here. But I'll tell you what, there are two ways to look at it. One is कि AI का topic है, तो अगर कोई बहुत senior professor है, शायद he or she may not be so, let's say, curious about it, may not be very, keenly looking at it because, and younger faculties would be more driven towards it because it's an upcoming topic.
Yeah.
I think what is important here is that the approach, right? The mentorship of the guide is more important than the topic, right?
Acha.
See, there are several tricks and I would say ways that a senior guide will be able to tell you which maybe a younger faculty may not be able to tell you. So इसमें आपको ये नहीं सोचना है कि मैं AI पे रिसर्च कर रहा हूँ तो मैं younger faculty के साथ जाना चाहिए. That is one aspect. Okay, I'm not saying that don't work with the younger faculty, but what I'm telling you is the work about around AI or what is happening in AI, that is something that you will have to do. You are the ones who are going to be searching information, looking at existing knowledge. So essentially, you need someone who can guide you with the methodology and the approach. So in research, what is more important is the approach, right? What are the ways to maneuver when you're stuck in your literature review, right? You know, what you should explore and what you should not explore. ये सारी चीजें, इसकी क्लैरिटी शायद एक सीनियर फैकल्टी आपको ज्यादा अच्छे से बता पाएगा than a younger faculty. Okay. Again, we are not generalizing here, okay, because it's very difficult to do that. So that you should also keep that in mind. So this, what I'm saying is, I'm challenging your thinking that AI पे research is only equal to or is only compatible with younger faculty. That may not be the case. Okay. I'll take other questions also. So Niyati's question was on, should I do a PhD immediately after my master's or not? I think Niyati, the answer to that is, see, if you get a clarity, are you there, Niyati, first of all?
Yes, yes, I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. So I think, if you are very, very sure by the end of your PG that, there is a certain topic or an area which you are very, very interested. Okay. Rupika, you had a question by any chance? You messaged.
I have several, but we'll get in touch with each other
Okay.
after the session.
Okay. ठीक है.
But thanks so
thank
much
you
for
for
this.
saying back. Yeah.
No, sorry so much. I would love to wait on for all your questions, because I'm sure all of us are thinking alike in some way or the other. But I have to rush right now for a class. Thanks a lot.
No worries. Thank you, Rupika.
See you.
Bye. See you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye. Yeah. So, if you get that clarity, Niyati, much early, in your before you are ending your PG, then maybe you can start immediately, right? That point on critical thinking, as I said, is not like you have to have a certain level of critical thinking before you start a PhD. I was just telling that it aids you, but if you're very clear that this is what you want to do, you want to deep dive into after your PG, and if you're able to find the right, sometimes what happens is when you're doing your PG and let's say abroad, you will find you will build a nice connection with maybe some of the faculties, and some of those faculties may be research, they may be researchers, and in that continuity, if there is a compatibility that is achieved and they like your work and you feel, let's say, comfortable working that faculty ke credentials अच्छे हैं, then I would say in that momentum, just do it. You don't need to wait for
Got it.
5 years, 10 years, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, got it.
Yeah. Milap, you raised your hand next.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Shamit. Actually, I could relate a lot whatever you said that, I don't know whether you know it or not. I have also studied at IISc Bangalore CPDM. So, and we interacted once.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry for
So
my lack of awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, I have so many questions. I don't know where to start, but in the age of ChatGPT, I'm not very good at writing. No, I can blabber all day, but I'm not. Writing is a skill which I learned after doing my second master's, and I'm not good at it. So in the age of ChatGPT, how to navigate that thing, or yeah. So and in the same thing, when you have so many fields or areas where you can focus on, how to narrow down on one, because one is in the design field, as you mentioned, the areas are very limited in a way, and the researchers or the papers are not that much available, and where to do PhD, is it in India, is it abroad, or how to find best for you in that way. So let's take these two for the moment, but
so I think on the AI piece, again, AI is a good assistive tool, but I'll tell you what, this aspect of critical thinking, Milap, is something which is only, I would say, only you have it in you, right? AI can help you summarize research papers, right? You can give 10 papers, वो summary बना देगा. आप उसको ये भी बोलोगे कि वो 10 पेपर में से common summary निकाल दो, वो भी बना देगा. But if your goal is to be fundamentally, let's say, be good at thinking, good at asking questions, good at analyzing. And if you're doing your PhD not just to get a degree, but to actually begin your journey as a researcher, which is 20 years after you finish your PhD or whatever, then I think you should use AI. I'm not saying that don't use AI, but that connecting the dots, that pattern recognition, critical thinking, identifying the key questions, वो आपको खुद ही करना है. Only then you will learn. Okay, so there are also AI tools these days where I'm sure you already know, most of you, where you can actually get a AI tool into a Zoom meeting, and that AI will give you a transcript and it will summarize the interview for you. Fair enough. But I still feel that until I look at that transcript for 2 times and highlight key points, and then, like how we do affinity clustering and all, pull insights out of it, I can't trust, even though AI ने वही दिया होगा जो शायद मैंने किया है, but जब तक मैं अपना brain नहीं चलाऊंगा, I will not be convinced. And I think that is a sign of a researcher's mindset, right? That is a way of, right? So, yeah.
I'm more towards our writing because, I have read papers. I know I have written something also because it was a part of my coursework. So, writing papers require a specific like academic language. It should not be ambiguous. It should be like, in a very certain way. So I can generate ideas or be a critical thinker, but like when it comes to writing, how to put those things in words,
Okay, so I think, we can, again, what I'm picking from here is, because I will not be able to give you an elaborate answer right now, but we can do a session again. See, this is also for me to see that how can I maybe look at more offerings, or what else can I do, right, in a similar session someday. So maybe one of the days we can connect and we can get some of, other people also to talk about how to go about writing. I think I had similar questions maybe 4 years ago. Right. And like I said, the reason you are a little, I would say, apprehensive or scared is because maybe there is a certain kind of a benchmark or a reference point in your head. कि इस तरह जब मैं लिखूंगा तब मैं कहलाऊंगा कि मुझे रिसर्च पेपर लिखना आता है. बट वहां तक पहुंचने के लिए आपको शायद 3 या 4 स्टेप्स होंगे ना. राइट. सो मे बी यू गेट दैट आउट ऑफ योर माइंड कि मुझे ऐसा लिखना है, मैं नहीं लिख पाता हूँ ऐसा. So even if you improve, right, I think I have seen that improvement in me. I'm still learning. Happen, every few months down the line, right? आप एक पैराग्राफ लिखो और आप शायद 2 हफ्ते बाद उसी चीज को फिर से लिखो. You will compare the two, what you've written 15 days back or 30 days back, and then you will find that your choice of words. One thing I've realized is कि अगर आपको कुछ लिखना है ना, आप फर्स्ट ड्राफ्ट बना रहे हो, शायद आप 80 वर्ड्स में लिखोगे. आप 1 महीने के बाद फिर से आप लिखने जाओगे, वो शायद 65 वर्ड्स हो चुके होंगे. राइट. एंड मे बी वो थोड़ा और रिफाइन होके नेक्स्ट टाइम वो आप 50 वर्ड्स में लिख चुके होंगे. एंड वर्ड्स मैटर व्हेन यू राइट. सो these things, it'll happen by practice. And I'm happy to do a longer conversation on this at some other point, Milap. And this can be one of the topics. Yeah, thank you, Niyati. I got your message. Thank you for joining in. Okay,
Thank
we
you
are
so much.
fine. Thank you, and see you at campus someday. Bye. Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Ankit, I can see your hand.
Hi, Shamit. Sorry, I sort
No
of
worries.
joined late, but do we have time for more, or do you want to wrap it up?
I can be here for another 10-15 minutes.
Okay.
And I want
So I'll just post my question to you, and maybe you can decide whether you want to answer it now or later.
Yeah.
So there are 2 questions. So I've been, you know me for a while. I've been wanting to do a PhD for a long time. It is quite sure that I'll be doing a part-time program. And like you said, I would like, given that I've understood quite a bit about academia, I would also want to do it from an esteemed university, because there's a lot of compromise that other universities, I can clearly see there are a lot of compromises they pursue. So there is one question you already touched upon, and one good part which I was not yet considering was digital infrastructure. I was not thinking about the tools, etc., that they should have applied for. So that's a good learning for me, at least from this session. For physical infrastructure, I had sort of for a very long time stuck my head to IIT Bombay. because they offered part-time, B, it's in Bombay, so I don't have to sort of shift base.
Yes.
Though while in Germany, I saw that a lot of people would easily move cities. In India, we sort of have this, a lot of other social things that sort of keep you stuck to a place. Now, my question is that there are a couple of different PhD topics that I'm exploring, some which might require hard infrastructure, which means workshops, laboratories, etc., more to do with rapid prototyping, etc. And some on the other end, there is like behavioral sciences, which is great at IIT Delhi, for example. Rather one of the only institutions which offers a good sort of support for behavior sciences. How I mean, I maybe this is something I need to answer for myself, but how much would you recommend that you choose a topic basis the university and the faculty? So say for example, I'm happy to do both, sort of, because those are both places that I am personally exploring. But should it be important to choose, say, IIT Bombay and take up a place which you can regularly access as a part-time? So as a full-time, you mentioned that, you have a lot of colleagues and professors you can meet. As a part-time, maybe you don't have that, even when you're in Bombay. But let's assume Delhi, you can go thrice a year, and Bombay, you can probably go every fortnight, every month. Should
I mean, of course, the more accessible a university is, it's always going to be very advantageous. But let me, add a few more things to which I think I missed earlier. Is when you start your PhD journey, you're supposed to do a coursework, right? And that coursework, again varies. Coursework means that you have to complete a certain number of credits. Okay. And again, it varies from university to university. Some, university would expect you to do, let's say 20, 24 credits. Some may expect you to do to about 10 or 12 credits. Okay. It's practically impossible to do 20 plus credit in one semester, which means technically you have to be in the campus for 2 semesters, which means almost a year. Now, of course, like you said, this only you can answer. If you have a practice, or let's say freelancing and other engagements happening parallelly, 1 year is going to be very challenging and maybe not possible. In that case, of course, IIT Bombay, even with 1 year, would be manageable for you if you're in Mumbai. I should also tell you that IIT, compared to all the IITs, I somewhere feel that for people with an MDes degree, if it is a design PhD and in a design department, IIT Delhi has the least number of credit requirement. Okay, so I could finish my coursework in one semester. Okay. Mine was a different case because I did it in COVID, so it was online. But I think in one semester you could do it. The equation is 1 credit is 15 hours of teaching engagement, right? And roughly about 15 to 30 hours of offline work. Which means if you're taking a, let's say if you're learning 10 credits in a semester, you're going to be having 150 hours of classes. And at least about 150 to 300 hours of work, assignments and submissions. Right? अगर आप उसको calculate करो, क्या आप वो 4 महीने 6 महीने में कर सकते हो? Maybe 10 credits, yes, but 15 credits, maybe not. Right? So that is a very important criteria to consider. Coming to equipments, I think if you're doing it from a good institution, and even if that institution doesn't have an equipment, mostly if your research is very, very important and interesting, and your PhD guide is also very inclined towards it, your PhD guide would have received a lot of grants. IITs में professors को अच्छी grants मिलती हैं, like to the range of about, to set up a lab, they get around 15-20 lakh rupees per year. Okay. And they can actually get equipment for you in the lab. Okay? So, yeah, I mean, again, it depends on how much aligned and how much interested, and how much are you showing your inclination towards the PhD, and how much is guide very confident that yes, Ankit ke liye karte hain, so that we'll be able to produce something interesting. So all of those equations want to come into play.
Sure.
Yeah.
Also, one more question, if there's nobody else in the queue. It's something also maybe you don't want to answer right away. I've heard a lot, I mean, mostly from non-design schools, but a lot of politics or organizational politics that comes into play while doing your PhD. And with most of them, like I think one of the participants also mentioned about your relationship with your guide, right? And a lot
Yeah.
of that relationship building, etc., happens through the politics or participation in intra-departmental or intra-professor politics. Typically, I've been a person who's wanted to stay away, and which is one of the reasons I was not able to join any full-time organization other than my own for a very long time. Because I mean, it's not just academic, but even in your normal offices, there is some level of politics. The
Yeah.
question here is that how much can you? I mean, maybe you're not an expert at this, but how much can you stay away from it and sort of do it smoothly? Because I mean, it's not just one person, but multiple people have spoken about. Especially the larger the organization, the more politics is at play, and you have to be a participant in it. Or I don't know if it's a fair
Um,
understanding also.
no, I think two things here. Ankit. One is if you're a part-time student, I don't think there will be any such. I think right now I feel that you're overthinking a bit here on this
Yeah,
aspect. If you're a
yeah,
full-time student, maybe it might matter a bit. Second thing is, I think your relationship and your bond with the guide is the most important thing in this equation,
got it.
right? So you are actually, you and your guide are one entity. Okay.
Hmm.
So even if there is bureaucracy, politics happening, that is for your guide to, that's for your guide to deal with, and
Right.
not you. If the bond is stronger, he's going to defend you at every place, right? And therefore, that relationship really matters. I should also tell you for everyone that there is a committee. जब आप PhD scholar बनते हो, एक committee बनती है जिसमें कम से कम 5-6 professors होते हैं. One is your guide, one is another professor from that department, maybe one more professor from some other department, one external expert or a professor, and then that committee is the one who assesses your progress and everything,
Right.
right? So and your guide, most cases may, is going to defend you even if there is someone who's challenging you at certain aspect. If you've done good work and you're progressing well and you're constantly in alignment, and you've been constantly discussing with your guide, he's going to take your side.
Sure.
Okay. So मतलब वो बॉन्ड इतना स्ट्रांग हो जाता है कि आई हैव कम अक्रॉस पीपल जो अपने पीएचडी के गाइड गाइड के घर पे जाके खाना खा चुके हैं.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Okay? That is how, if you're a full-time scholar, they invite you at home, right? So
Right.
they start seeing you as a colleague also.
Right. Got it.
So yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
That I mean that
Before I come
helps.
back to,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks, Ankit.
Right.
Before I come back to you, Bilal, because you've already asked a question, let me ask Jitendra, Faiza, Pankaj, Makran, if they have any questions.
Very question actually. Listening to others, I realized that some of my apprehensions have been the same. Whether you select a guide or institution, and I think you've answered that. So I think the thing that I've been dealing with for the last 10, 12 years, I think I'm hearing it all out here, and I think something positive will come out of this. My apprehensions will somehow be dealt with somehow. I'm not sure.
Okay. Wonderful. I think, all the people who logged in today, it will be nice to know, and I think you need to give some time to reflect, if this session has really triggered something. Take some time, and maybe you can text me, you can email me, you can call me saying, कि ये हो रहा है, ये सोच रहे हैं, या ये, and even if it is like, no, I thought about it, maybe I want to drop it. It will be nice to know, what, your journey, is going to be like, right, after the session. And maybe we keep interacting more at a certain frequency, right? Because I also learn in the process. So yeah, thanks, Jitendra, and wishing you good luck for that.
Thanks, sir. Thanks. I'll keep joining whenever you have sessions because it keeps
Yes.
me. That's the only kind of, I would say, sitting in Lonavala, focusing on our business. I think this is the only kind of
Yeah.
active touch with academia that I'll have. So I think that's important to me. Thanks.
Are you going to be in Lonavala next weekend?
Yes, all
This evening?
weekends.
Okay. I'll let you know. I might drop in. I'll tell you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But the good
Faiza,
thing
you have a
about
question? Yeah. Go
just
on,
one thing I
sorry.
wanted to say. So I started thinking about PhD in 2009. That's when I first wrote my first proposals, SOPs, proposals as well as SOPs, and then kind of that journey has continued. I've been writing proposals and dumping them, and got admissions, and then didn't join. Finished the coursework and then didn't join. it's been a very erratic journey. But what has
Hmm.
happened is that the research topic that I started with, the topic itself has evolved. So not the topic, the research itself has evolved in that field. That now I have to think of like three different topics I wrote, and all of them have been accomplished by other researchers.
Yeah.
And so now that I have to think about it of a new from causes to now I have to think about impact. So initially I was thinking about cause of something. What is the cause of a certain lack, a gap?
Yeah.
Now the gap has been filled. I have to think of the impact of the gap, of how that gap has been filled.
So
And
therefore, you
that's
have to act very fast. Like, you know, I mean, ठीक है.
मेरे से नहीं हो रहा
Now,
इतना fast. I think it's been
making
taking
up
a
your
long
mind,
time.
making up your mind to applying for PhD, I don't think that cycle should be more than a year. ठीक है.
It shouldn't be. I've applied. I've finished the coursework also, then dropped out.
Okay. Yeah, Faiza, you can go to next.
Yeah, I don't have any question as such because for me, it's a very new path that I'm looking at, and a lot of talks that you did, and even the questions that others have shared really will help me, through my
Okay.
future up as well. And
Yeah.
having to look at this early,
Yeah.
really helping me a lot. So
Great,
thank
great. Okay, thanks, Faiza. Yeah. Makarand, yeah, nice to see you on screen. Yeah.
Thank you. I just dropped a question. It was more towards, getting admission into a different domain or faculty. Say, suppose I'm from design background and I
Yeah.
don't get a good guide or a university for particularly for my kind of a research.
Hmm.
So I wanted to go for either psychology or environmental sciences. Now, approach admission and those difficulties. Many of the times I get an answer in Pune itself that, oh, unfortunately, we don't have a seat for no non-person who is
Hmm.
from
Yeah.
psychology. So it's
Hmm.
a bit difficult.
Yeah. So two things here, okay, Makarand. Of course, you know, the thing is that every department, even in a big university, has their eligibility criteria. So most likely environmental science में वो MSc या sciences PG domain को लेंगे. I think you should still talk to the faculty, okay, and I believe some of the faculties might be interested to at least know what is in your mind. Okay, and if they're interested and if there is a scope, if the faculty is serious enough, maybe the faculty can actually figure out a formal way to deviate from that eligibility criteria and create a kind of a special entry for you. Okay, I have not come across this happening, but मुझे कहीं ना कहीं ऐसा gut feel है कि ये हो सकता है. That is one. Second, what you should also do is that you should talk to the person from environmental science or psychology. Also talk to a faculty from your primary domain if it is design, and then you can actually have a co-guide, right? So you may register as a PhD scholar in a design department because that is where you fit in from an eligibility criteria. But when you're talking to the design ka faculty, please tell him or her that because I'm also interested to do this interdisciplinary PhD, I would wish to have some of the professors from this. So and there that guide and co-guide model works. So in this way, what will happen is you will meet the eligibility criteria and you will also have an expertise coming in from the other domain that you're interested to work on. Yeah.
Shamit, that reminds me of the question. This is also something that I've dealt with. Is that are there any multidisciplinary PhDs, institutions that encourage that?
Actually,
I know Parsons had started one, but that is in New York. Parsons had started one, but India ka pata nahi.
India mein I have not come across. Okay, at the max, what has happened is कि दो अलग-अलग professors from अलग-अलग department have come together to guide a particular PhD student. But I have not come across even the dissertation titles that you see, of scholars. Mostly they're very specialized to one domain. Okay, so I'm not come across. But what is happening is IITs are now started to collaborate with, global universities. Like IIT Bombay has a partnership with Monash University in Australia. Okay, and I don't know if the design department is part of that MOU, but I know that a lot of mechanical engineering scholars are doing some bit of work here and then they are going there and doing some bit of work. I still don't think it is interdisciplinary, but it is I would say, cultural or geographical in that sense. Okay. Yeah, field research. Yeah, Jitendra, the question on is field research taught in the course? ये actually हम next इसमें बात करते हैं. But when you start your PhD journey, कौन से courses चुनना है, ये usually आपके guide के साथ आपको discuss करना होता है. Depending on the topic you choose and your guide's interest, guide will tell you कि because you want to do a PhD, like in my case, my PhD is around, let's say, business or, design education and entrepreneurship. My guide said that you've already done a lot of design courses in your PG. You should take one course from social science and one course from the Department of Management, right? So in my coursework, I did a mandatory course on research writing, and I did a social research methods course from humanities and social science department, and I did a course on strategic management from the business school, right? Uh, the other advantage of a bigger university is that आपको अगर आपकी क्रेडिट्स के अलावा और काम और कुछ पढ़ना है, आपको AI और ML पढ़ना है, it may not be part of your PhD very directly related, but because you are a full-time scholar and you can invest time, you can tell your PA guide that I want to, this semester I've completed my course requirement, but मुझे interest है AI ML या business analytics पढ़ने के लिए. So they'll say, हाँ ठीक है कर लो, अगर if you can manage, go register, then you register. You do additional credits. That is an advantage of full time sometimes. And maybe that is where a bit of an interdisciplinary element can also come in, right? The power of choice that you get. Okay. Okay. Milap, you had anything else?
I have so many questions, but
So
yeah,
maybe you
let's.
can, I think we can maybe, I mean, because I don't want to hold people, so
Yeah,
I can hear your questions. Maybe I don't need to answer all of them right now, because even
yeah,
I'll have to, leave in 5 minutes. But Pankaj, I didn't ask you if you and Bhumika, if you guys had a question.
I think my question is more on the front of I fall in the maybe and the no category right now.
Okay.
But the challenge that I'm currently facing is there's a certain topic that I'm very excited about, which is
Hmm.
design for play. I've been actively
Design?
searching design for play.
Okay.
I've been actively searching for people who are active in this field and domain. I've come across one certain university in Kolding, which is the design school in Kolding, which is very actively working in this domain.
Okay.
I've interacted with their professors. I've read quite a bit of their research papers as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But somewhere I'm not seeing, like, even Indians who've studied in that university who've come back to India and now are practicing in the industry. Somewhere I'm not seeing a lot of impact of what
Okay.
they've studied there, and they've come back and they're not able to apply things. So the challenge that
Okay.
I'm facing is, how do I get access to the correct kind of people who I can discuss this further with?
Yeah, I mean, if you're, see, I think if you're very clear on what you wish to do in long term, right, then your search for the institute, search for the guide, and of course your topic, I think all of that will come in alignment, right? What I would suggest is, whenever you're selecting a guide, please do look at like I said, do look at their research work. What are they working on? What is their research outcome? And then ask a question that, if I also produce something around these lines, 3 years, 4 years down the line after my PhD, is that you can do an impact assessment of the current research, right? You can. So what you do is you ask a question: if this is the kind of research that this lab and this faculty is producing, and I want to apply it for, let's say, design for play or whatever, if there is a match, then you will get a positive vibe saying that yes, I should go and I should do more research on X, Y, Z aspect of design for play, and then kind of loop it back into into my projects or whatever. So
Right.
bit of a homework would be required there, Bhumika.
Yeah, sure.
You
Thank
get
you
it,
so
right?
much. I think, yeah, I also fall in the category who still needs to, like, sit and
Yeah.
reflect on whatever happened today.
Okay.
But thank you so much.
Pankaj, any questions?
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say about designing for play. There is a faculty in IIT Delhi, Akash
Okay, I
Johri.
think Pankaj is, I think, on the move as well. So this is good. Thank you. Milap, if you want, we can just do a quick 2-minute chat. And uh, thank you for joining in on a Sunday morning. And it was I would say, much interactive and better than I thought it would be. And I would, looking at the interest and the, I would say, engagement, I would want to do more and more of this. And yeah, wishing you all good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamit.
Thank you, Shamit. Thank you so much for doing this.